And if we just are willing to hear the experience that someone else is having, not from a place to debate it, because that is the other part of this, is that we are looking to feel better about how we see the world, and we often want the world around us to be reaffirmed through our own eyes. And so when people tell us that they are having a different experience, it's easy for us to reject that. And I like to say, what if what they're telling you is an experience that they are having, and not just them, but other individuals who share that lived experience? And if we can just operate there to better understand, what experience are 5-year-olds having around technology? Their opinions matter. What experience are 12-year-olds having around mental health? What experience are 20-year-olds having around schooling? What experience are 30-year-olds having around social culture? What experience are individuals with autism, or who are non-binary, or who are Christian, or who are white male, or who are, you name it?
Welcome to episode 6 of Mental Health in the Age of the Metaverse. I'm your host, Christian Ulstrup. In every episode, I sit down with a mental health professional to talk about technology, including virtual reality, cryptocurrency, social media, and the rapidly evolving internet landscape, and how technology impacts our mental health. My guest today is Dr. Spirit. Dr. Spirit is an Atlanta, Georgia-based licensed psychotherapist, media personality, entrepreneur, researcher, and devoted wife and mother of 7. She works with couples, adults, adolescents, and families in her clinical work, and she has a new Disney Plus series called Family Reboot, which is premiering on June 15th. Dr. Spirit, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how you doing, Christian?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on.
Okay, so listen though, but before we get started, you just have to call me Spirit for this time period, okay? As we venture through the metaverse together. Very laid back, as you can see. I'm having a good time just relaxing and hanging out today. So nice and easy.
I want to dive right in. You have a very unusual background for a licensed therapist, in that you have almost 2 decades of media experience. You've been on radio shows, you've been on TV shows, you've had your own television shows, all while being an entrepreneur, working with clients, growing your own business. Tell me, how did that all start?
Yeah. By accident. By complete accident, to be honest with you. It was very interesting. I love to tell folks, I grew up in the age of the Cosby Show era, Oprah, different world, that kind of thing. And I'm originally from Los Angeles. And so we didn't have historically Black colleges and universities that are more popularly known as HBCUs. So for my college experience, I wanted to come away from Los Angeles to just kind of come back east or down south to have that whole college, really fraternity, sorority, band, really just in-depth experience that I couldn't get in California. But being from LA also, that's Hollywood, that's television, that's radio, that's all of those things. So I was very comfortable, very familiar with. My parents growing up had been on game shows and that kind of thing. So knowing that you could get work as an extra and knowing that you could just kind of do that as part of, what you do on the side was the thing. And so while I was in my master's program, I actually was an extra on a film set. And there was a young lady that was there. I was, I can't even think of the course at the moment, but I was in a master's program for professional counseling, and she was just kind of having a conversation. We were all extras, and the conversation turned towards relationships. And I could tell, like, the folks that we were standing around with had no idea what they were talking about from a mental health perspective. And long story short, I started talking to her, and it became this whole thing where all of us were just standing. It went from like 2 people to like 20 people having a conversation. And she was like, "This is really great." And it just so happened that she was a producer for radio. And she was like, I'm a producer for radio, but I really want to do film. That's why I'm here. She said, but I would love to use you, if you don't mind, to do an air check. I'm trying to get a show developed, and I'm wondering if you could just come in and help me record it. And it won't be hard. It'll be exactly the same thing that we're doing now that we could do then. And so I thought it was fun. She was a cool enough young lady. And I said, sure thing, I'll come and help you. And at the time, we had no idea what we were doing. I had never done any real radio. It was an AM talk station. And we punched in, and by punching in, I mean we went live on air on a Saturday. They never should have really let us on the air, to be honest with you, Christian. We punched in and let's just say, the top of the hour is when you start a radio show usually. So if it was 6 o'clock, it should have been right at 6. It was like 6:17. We just punched in live and just started talking and having this conversation, but it was really incredible. And long story short, it was just a huge success right from the beginning. And the program director wanted me to do the show. And at the time, I was like, absolutely not. I just did it as a favor to help her kind of show her proof of concept. And I am still in school. I am not even licensed to do this. And the program director was like, well, what does a license have to do with this? This is radio. And I said, well, when I finally get to the point where I'm doing this kind of thing for people, I really want to be able to do it as a licensed professional. And so he wanted the show so bad. I still to this day just thank him for his vision. But he was like, listen, I don't care what you have to say. If you want to run disclaimers at the top and the bottom of the show to talk about you're just a student, if you want to say that you're a student with every question that you answer, we don't care. Let's just do this. And how he really got me, because I still was not sold on the idea, but how he really got me was, he said, Spirit, you seem really passionate about the work that you do. Let me ask you a question. He said, how many clients could you see a day? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, if you worked all day, worked your fingers to the bone, didn't take any lunch breaks or anything, how many clients could you see a day? And I said, if I didn't take any breaks and I just kind of got my notes done and just plowed through, I said, 8. I could see a solid 8 every day. And he said, so let me ask you then, when you were doing the radio, how many people do you think that you talked to? And I had never considered that. And all of a sudden I got this horrific bubbling in my stomach. And I thought, I don't know, how many people did I talk to? And he said, Spirit, at every 15-minute interval, you were talking to 500,000 people. And my stomach dropped. And he said, so let me explain this to you. You say you believe in mental health. You say you want to be able to help people. Do you want to talk to 8 people a day? Or do you want to talk to 500,000 people every 15 minutes? Because radio magnifies the message. And when he said that to me, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And there was no turning back. And so ever since then, that is how I've chosen to use media, whether it's television, whether it's radio, whether it's now podcasting, whether it's print work, because just the metaverse is constantly expanding. But this allows us to use these platforms in a way that allows us as mental health professionals to really be present in places and spaces that we would never be. And so it's just an awesome, humbling experience, because I know, and I have learned firsthand, that most of the people that really need help, we will never see in our offices and we will not be able to reach.
I love that. That's such a positive message. And, as somebody who speaks and works with a lot of licensed mental health professionals, but is not one myself, I know this is a big struggle for counselors, therapists, clinicians in general, which is you're not taught how to take advantage of these platforms, how to build your own media brand, how to build a business, how to do marketing in school. And I think there's a lot of fear around taking that first step. Folks have questions. So for those therapists who are in the audience who are feeling energized right now because they just heard this story and they're realizing they could do a lot if they can get their own message around, out there, connect with 500,000 people. That's a great goal to shoot for. What advice would you give them when it comes to taking that first step, developing a platform, marketing your services and your message?
Well, I think you really have to be clear on what it is that you want to do. And you are right as it relates to we don't get that training in school. I mean, I swear, Christian, I wish that we would have had business classes that went along with even just one class with the work that we did as clinicians. Because for a lot of us, they hold up the idea of being a private practice clinician as like the holy grail in the work that we do. It's like, yeah, you'll be able to have your own practice. You'll be able to make your own hours. You'll be able to work for yourself. Hallelujah. But what they don't tell you is that means you're going to be wearing 20 hats that you know nothing about. So school prepares us to be experts in technique. It does not prepare us to be CPAs. It does not prepare us to be scouts to locate commercial property. It doesn't prepare us to market ourselves or to network or to employ people or to incorporate or any of the things that require us to do that. And I won't even get into getting licensed or getting contracted for insurance panels, billing. I mean, it's just a never-ending nightmare. And so what I would say is, first and foremost, clinicians have to get really clear on what it is that they want to do. Oftentimes, people think that they need media in order to really have large access and large reach. But if you're an individual provider, large access and large reach may not be what you need, may not even be what you want. And you may not even have the infrastructure to be able to handle it. So for me, for example, I have a group practice. I have 11 employees. It's not a small operation. Now, when I started as one person, probably by myself as a one-man band. And it wasn't until literally my practice was growing at the seams to the point where I kid you not, unfortunately, I don't wear it like a badge of honor, but more as a cautionary tale. It got so bad that I literally lost $12,000 in billing in a quarter because I could not see the number of clients that I was servicing and do the insurance portions and doing the billing. And it got to the point where I was literally staying up till 2 and 3 a.m. trying to get all this done every night. And I was burnt out. I was just totally ineffective. And so even then I was afraid to deal with employees because I didn't want the pressure of being responsible for somebody else's livelihood. And so I literally started out with one college student, 10 hours a week at $10 an hour. And she would come in and answer my phone and my emails. And it just made all the difference in the world. And at that point, I thought to myself, this is a necessity. This is not something that is a luxury. And so what I would say to clinicians is get very clear on what it is that you want. Because if you only want to see 10 people or 15 people or 25 people or 30 people, and most people will go, as those numbers go up, they go, no, that's not me. That's not me. So you don't need to talk to 500,000 people in order to have 20 or 30 clients. The question is, what is your passion point? And in the same way that I tell clients when I'm actually working in therapy, I tell therapists the exact same thing, which is begin with the end in mind. When you visualize where you want to be, the experiences that you want to have each day, what do you visualize yourself doing? Are you solely seeing clients? Are you seeing clients and speaking on platforms? If so, what do those platforms look like? Are they social media platforms? Are they conference stages? Are they arenas? Are they global stages? Like, what is your vision? And I think the interesting thing is, I'm a lot older than most of probably you and most of the other clinicians out there. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm in my 4th decade now, settled comfortably and loving it. So it's a little different for me. But for my younger counterparts, like you all have grown up in the age of social media and the internet. I literally can remember AOL and the you've got mail. Like that was new for me, right? So it was a little different. But I think that for you all have lived your life in a way that being a part of social engagement and a part of the metaverse is such a normal part of your life and normal part of your existence that the need to be seen, the need to be engaged, the need to be an influencer or have people know you for the sake of knowing you, is almost, there's a certain pressure to it that says if you're not doing that, if you don't have a lot of followers, if you're not getting a lot of likes, if you're not a household name, then somehow you're failing at your work. And that's just not it. That's just not it. So I think that therapists really have to get clear to know you don't have to be popular to be good at what you do and to be fulfilled at it.
That's a great message, and I think applicable to everyone, not just therapists.
It would
right?
relieve so much pressure. Yeah, it would relieve so much pressure if we all focused on passion and getting out of the box and pursuing what really makes us happy as opposed to what makes us feel validated by other people. Because we're constantly measuring ourselves and how well we're doing based upon where other people are that are next to us. And I love to tell people, if you can see your competition, then you're probably not looking far enough. And really, your competition should be really at the tip of your nose. So it's like, how do we help you go in as opposed to going out constantly looking around you?
That's a great message. And to the mission aspect, right? So everything that you're doing, just like you're saying, it's towards this end of community engagement, getting the right messages out there. And that's something that works for you. And that's not going to be the same for everybody else. So depending on what your ends are, what your vocational calling is, even if you nominally have the same profession, that's going to be different for person to person. So don't get distracted, by looking laterally.
Absolutely.
Look up.
Absolutely. I will tell people all the time, I will meet a lot of clinicians. I work with interns. I supervise folks because I believe in mentorship. And so I literally will say, do not follow me, because what I'm doing is my assignment is just totally something different than most people even would ever fathom doing. I think that in a lot of ways, what I'm trying to create is so beyond ambitious that half the time I'm looking at my own self in the mirror going, who told you to do this? But I do believe that there's a higher power that is just kind of providing that provision and that desire. But for me, just so, your audience knows, for the therapists that are looking and go, no, I really want to be like Spirit, I'm working on building a global mental health center. A global respite. Like, what I'm trying to do is something that's so far beyond just, I'd like to have an office where people consistently come to see me. That is like such a micro part of the work. I am looking at building a national mental health program for grades K through 12. I'm trying to revamp legislation in this country. Legacy for me is a really important thing in terms of leaving a huge footprint for how the next generation can look at mental health and needs to be looking at the emerging needs of mental health and to meet the challenges, not just nationally, but globally. And so please don't look at me and think, how do I do what you do? Unless you're looking at me and saying, how do I help do that? Because I can always use help. It takes a village. So I'm always looking at finding the village, but please don't use me as like the blueprint, because I'm not it and I'm winging it like everybody else.
Yeah. And a global village at that. I would love to see what that looks like.
Absolutely.
Everyone's kind of, it's traditionally, right? Because you've had the state licensure restrictions. Imagining what it could look like if you could share resources across even national boundaries. And I'm personally optimistic that something like the Metaverse could help make this possible. Very, very exciting to think about. So I think this is probably a good segue. You mentioned that you're working with K through 12 students. I know you work with educators, policymakers. Something that's really top of mind, I think, for everybody across the country, but especially parents, especially teachers, especially counselors and therapists who work with kids and teens, is, what the heck is going on with the mental health crisis? And as kind of a corollary to that, what is the role of technology? You've had the New York Times writing about this. They're running a series right now. There's been a lot of talk about social media, that dynamic that we just discussed of kind of looking at your peers instead of being focused on the thing that you're supposed to be doing. What do you think the role of technology is in this crisis that we face right now?
Well, that's an interesting question, Christian. And I think I would have to say it depends on the direction that you're oriented in. It has the ability to be the ultimate blessing and help us. Now we have more access to technology than ever. that puts information at our fingertips at almost the touch of a button. Anything you could ask for, and we're so technologically advanced now that we don't even have to type something in. We can just ask our device, voice activated, what is this? Or what do you think about this? Or what's the statistics on this? Right? And we can get that information in ways that can profoundly help us and heal us and give us insight and connect us and provide resources and all of those things. But we also have to recognize that there's a dark side to this as well. And so there are places and spaces where people become radicalized, where they receive misinformation, where they operate in silos that are unhealthy, that breed dysfunction, conspiracy, paranoia, that actually drive us to segregate us into more polarized places and spaces. And especially for children who have not really had the full psychological or physiological development of their brains, it's very hard to decipher what's true and what's not true, what's real and what's not real. And sometimes that can be not just emotionally dangerous for them or psychologically dangerous, but physically dangerous as well. And I can give you a great example because when you were introducing me, you mentioned the fact that I have 7 children, and that's not a typo. I actually have 7 children. And my children are 25, 20, 17, 12, 10, excuse me, she just had a birthday. Let me not do that. 11, 6, and 4. Okay. And the interesting thing about this is to watch them developmentally grow through technology, and each of them have their own personalities, their own relationship with online. But I will say the most impressionable of all of my children right now, the child that I worry about the most, is my 6-year-old. Because he absolutely is a daredevil. He absolutely loves YouTube. He absolutely loves being afraid and frightened. And what he does not have the physiological ability to discern is what is real and what's not. And so he will see some of these people, if I'm not careful about his content, he will see people doing things that he doesn't realize have edits to it. I'll give you a great example. So the other day, he was watching a guy at a skate park do these really daring flips on his skateboard. And what he did not see was a few videos later, the guy says, the top of my head on this video is actually not real. Because if you watch what really happened, I took my helmet and I put this green tape over it in order to use it as a green screen to then crop that later on because I wanted to look cool doing these videos. And so my 6-year-old had no way of discerning that the videos were not real or that they were edited. And so as soon as he saw this, the first thing that he does is go, I want to do that with my 4-wheeler too. And when I saw him attempting to do this, and I'm going, son, where's your helmet? He said, I don't want a helmet. I want to do it like he did it. And I said, you want to do what? Like who? And when he showed me the video, I was like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And he has had these moments just in the last year where now he'll start to go, Mom, is that real or not? Did he really cut his finger off? Did he really burn himself? Did he really blow that up? Like different kinds of things. And I'll have to say, no, honey, that is what technology is able to do. And so it's a very interesting thing because a lot of our children, unfortunately, are having more and more screen time. They're having more and more unattended access, especially with all the stress and everything that's going on. Parents nowadays are under more stress to just make ends meet than ever. And it's really easy to kind of put a device in your kid's hand, sometimes even if they're sitting right next to you, and you totally be unaware of what they're looking at. You hand them your cell phone while you're just trying to get this email done for the office, and you don't realize that they've scrolled somewhere and they've clicked through to the next thing. And it is just something that is psychologically damaging because if they're not having conversations with you and you're not having conversations with them, you don't even realize what they're absorbing and giving their own meaning to. And oftentimes it may be the wrong meaning because they can't properly contextualize, but they carry that with them over their lifetime. So we've really got to be careful and we've really got to be thinking about the benefits, but also the consequences of screen time and technology. And I won't even get into the amount of time that we're spending online. That is really scary for most of us nowadays.
It is. I mean, a common question that we hear from parents is simple question, very complicated answer. Depends person to person, but how much screen time is too much? But usually what we hear is, hey, there's the quantity aspect, right? But then there's also the quality. And you actually alluded to this earlier. It's something that I'm personally very concerned about is the we say the digital drugs are getting more powerful. You're going from 2D to 3D right now. Apple's going to be announcing their device probably later this year or early next year. So spatial computing, VR, AR, it's going to be going mainstream. And so at least if you have a YouTube video, you can sort of understand that, it's a video, you can step away even if it's really hypnotizing. But if you're able to create experiences that are, high fidelity, it becomes very difficult to tell reality, from whatever this virtual experience is. You combine that now with the really dark side of the internet, which is, like you said, disinformation, conspiracies, that can have real world consequences because people are taking what they encounter there and applying it to the material world. So what do you think about, I think when it comes to disinformation, radicalization, that kind of content online, what can parents do to make it safer for their kids to make sure they don't fall into one of these rabbit holes?
Well, I think the hardest part is the simplest thing, but it's still the most difficult for us to do, and that's the old talk to each other. Effective communication. Nowadays, we're so busy going that we don't even talk to our kids about what they're doing online. We don't, as long as they're quiet and they're lost somewhere and it gives us a second to just break. And we think that because they're in our homes or because they're next to us or they're over in the next room, we think that they're safe. And so we don't recognize what they're accessing. And our children are not going to come to us typically and say, hey, mom, or hey, dad, I have a question about this, or I saw this. What do you think about this? And so as parents or even just stewards of children, because, everybody is not necessarily a parent, but everybody interacts with children. So whether you're an aunt or an uncle or a grandma or a coach or an instructor or a teacher or you name it, if you are dealing with children, you have the opportunity to talk to them about what they are consuming, about how they're thinking, about how it's informing not just their thoughts, but their feelings, how it's shaping the scope of the world. And so it may be just as simple as when you're driving in the car, asking your kid, hey, what's your favorite game? I know that you play online. Tell me about the game. What do you like about it? Who do you play with? Look at how much time they're spending. And listen, when I tell you, I understand what it means to be at least a socially connected, but not engaged in social media. Because like I said, growing up just on the cusp of all of this, I didn't really devour it. But my husband, when I tell you he is a gamer to the point that, Christian, I kid you not, each of my children, we had to battle over names, okay? So each of my children, I have been able to name them their first names. My husband, unfortunately for me, has named them their middle names, and all of my children have gamer names. So I have a Link, I have an Ikora, I have Sonic, I have Sega, like it just goes on and on, okay? So I mean, he's a die-hard to the fullest gamer, okay? So having to talk to the kids about what it is that they like, what their relationships are with people. And here's something that's very interesting, especially how not just COVID has changed things, but just how technology has changed for the younger generations, the way that they interact. Most of their friends are online. Most of their friends are not their classmates anymore. I mean, for example, my 12-year-old gets up in the middle of the night sometimes, and even as a therapist, I have to kind of measure that to go, is it okay that he's setting his alarm to lose sleep at 3:00 in the morning because he wants to play Roblox with a friend who lives in London and they're 4 or 5 hours ahead? Should I be worried about that? How long should they be able to spend building these worlds? And when they're online for 2 hours, should I now pull them away? And what is their feeling about being pulled into the real world? And how do you find the balance? And I think it's very interesting because as researchers, because I do research too, as researchers, we can't prove or disprove anything. We can only find data that supports or refutes some of the perspectives or some of the hypotheses or the questions that we're asking. And I think that the real answer is that none of us really have a singular answer about how we see the role of technology now or how we move forward. And so, what I can tell you is, especially during this COVID period, that technology has been life saving for children. Not just because it's allowed them to stay interconnected to their friends and family, but it's allowed them to continue to go to school. For many who are, homeschooled or virtually learning, even now, many students are doing that. We have seen profound benefits, especially in communities of color where kids have felt minoritized or stigmatized or unsafe in their schools. And so we're seeing a rise of the number of students who will continue to use technology in order to learn. We've seen parents who have decided, listen, I don't want to do brick and mortar school now. I can take my kids across the country or across the world to show them the things that they've been learning. And we can use technology to incorporate that learning. I have a student they're a client. I don't want to give away too much information, but their parents are able to travel. They have means that allow them to travel. And so they have spent this last year literally traveling the world to look at some of the most beautiful places that the student will learn about before they get there, to learn basic things about culture and the museums and the historic monuments. And then they actually get to go and living, breathing, see these things. And so some people are figuring out how to leverage technology as a hybrid, as an accent or an enhancement to what they're doing in the everyday world. And then I've met people and I've been fascinated by the conversation of, well, what if this is all just a simulation? And they tell me, well, how do you know for sure, Spirit, that we're actually human beings having this tangible thing and this is not a metaverse within a metaverse? And I personally am not that far yet. I touch myself and I go, well, my senses, if they program this, then they've done a really good job with the scenery around this place. But I think that is even funny. And as I've seen some movies that kind of have those suggestions, there was a movie where there was a guy, he was blue shirt guy. I can't even think of the movie, but my kids were watching it and they were like, Mom, how do you know we're not all blue shirt guy? Where he was like a background character in this game, right? And so I was like, well, here's the blue shirt. If I am, just know that I love you and I'm going to do as best I can with you. And then my character is hardwired to do this. So this is what it is, right? So I don't think that we know definitively, and I don't think that there is a singular answer definitively. But what I tell parents to use as a driving measure is your child thriving in the way that their lives are set up now? Do you see them moving?
I want to switch gears for a second, and it's a pretty important topic that I think is top of mind for a lot of folks, which is, just in the past couple of weeks, we've had two really horrific atrocities happen. One in Buffalo and in Uvalde, these mass shootings, which unfortunately they've become just a common occurrence in the U.S. There's been a lot of discussion on Twitter that's been very controversial in framing these horrific events as primarily mental health issues or something related to mental health. You're a mental health professional. You're an advocate for having the public understand, what is and is not mental health, how to sort of think about it in the right way. What do you think?
Yeah, and I should also add to that, if we were going down the bullets, I should also say that I'm a gun owner. I'm a registered licensed carrier. I have more guns than a little. I'm a Black woman that lives in the Deep South. Let me just say that. And I'm also a child and a sibling who comes from, and a grandchild that comes from a long line of law enforcement officers and veterans. So I see this as a very complex, nuanced conversation. The part that is the least an element in this conversation, ironically, is the mental health piece, as we talk about Uvalde and Buffalo. Because with the Buffalo shooter, clearly that gentleman, and I use that term loosely, was a self-proclaimed white supremacist, and a nationalist, a white nationalist. And so, as I love to explain to people, racism is not a mental illness, although it is a disease. It is a disease that has been killing our country since 1619. And I think that even with the shooter in Uvalde, there is so much that we don't know about him, about his history. We know that he did have some recognized homicidal ideation, is what we call that in my line of work. Whereas, even as even a year ago, from what I understand in some of the reports now, that he had expressed the idea of wanting to harm people. Even if he never said specifically children, he talked about murdering people. And when he was confronted about some of these statements, he kind of laughed it off and minimized and dismissed it and said, ha, ha, ha. It was just a joke. I was just kidding. And unfortunately, the way that our industry or our profession works, the only thing that we can do is assess risk. And if we go through all of the professional channels that we have in order to assess risk, and we cannot confirm with any real sense of clinical judgment or diagnostic impression that a valid or viable risk exists, then unfortunately individuals will fall through the cracks. What I will say is, from what we at least know now with the Uvalde shooter, there is no recognized diagnosis. There is no clinical diagnosis. So I will not allow us, nor will I allow society to just prescribe or assign a mental health diagnosis to him at this point, even though we have to recognize that clearly some sociopathy or some psychopathology has to be there for an individual to do what he did in such a cold, calloused, calculated way. But I think then that if we are too quick to put labels and to kind of sweep this under the rug as, oh, this was just an individual that had mental illness, then we will miss a necessary and pivotal and imperative part in our dialogue about mental health reform, about gun reform, and about recognizing that we need to be showing up in our society differently. And so I think oftentimes the greater society is more desirous of putting a label on somebody as a way of giving something meaning that then allows them to disconnect and say, oh, there was the answer. Something was wrong with that individual, as opposed to there is a sickening of our society that needs addressed. And once we're able to remove ourselves from it, it also allows us to feel safer. Right? No one that I know would do that. No one in my community would do that. No one in my neighborhood would do that. I'm safe. My children are safe. And so it allows us to turn away as a psychological protective mechanism and just go back to business as usual. But what we know is that things like this with mass shootings have happened time and time again. What we know is that there is no real gun reform yet in this country. What we know is that even with the proposed legislation around gun reform, there is no real conversation being had with mental health professionals around what that should look like and if mental health should even be part of those conversations as we talk about universal background checks, as we talk about should certain diagnosis automatically exclude people from being able to exercise their constitutional rights to bear arms. But what we also know is that happens even now. I've worked with veterans over the years and their families. I've worked with individuals who have had top secret clearance at very high levels. And what I know is that as we have assessed their fitness for duty, if they have found to be unfit, or when they recognize that a consequence of being unfit for duty is losing weapons, is losing access, is losing certain things, then we surely as a society recognize that mental health is an important part of how we're showing up in society with each other. And so I think that this is an excellent moment for not just parents, but for us as a society to be having these complex conversations. We were talking about domestic terrorism and the fact that the Department of Justice has recognized for several years white nationalists and white supremacists as the number one threat to America's safety. But that is not an issue that the majority culture is really ready to deal with, because we're not ready to deal with racism and systemic racism. Many states are trying to legislate away those conversations. I have worked with individuals in legislation and in social justice work in states like Texas, where they have attempted to ban civil rights education so that we don't learn about women like Susan B. Anthony. We don't learn about individuals like Cesar Chavez. We don't talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as part of civil rights. We don't want to have those conversations. And ironically, we say, and you mentioned Twitter. So, I am like a Twitter warrior. That is like my place to like legislate every socio-political movement that exists. And I talked about it. I said, so we don't want to have these conversations around race, around sexual orientation, around sexual identity. We don't want to have these conversations because we say that it would make our children uncomfortable. And I use we is where those quotations are, because it's not all of us that are saying this. But there are those that we have placed in power who this is the argument that they're making. And as a mental health professional, it's so irrational and illogical to me, Christian, because we say we don't want them to have these conversations because it would make our children uncomfortable. Yet we send them to school to have active shooter drills in order to practice in the event that they or their classmates or their teachers and the people they love might be murdered. And we have them go through that with no concern for their comfort or discomfort. So these are not justifiably rational arguments, especially within the context of mental health. Because can you imagine what it must be like for a student to say, I'm going to practice what will happen if I or my classmate or my cousin who's down the hall or my younger or older sibling who's in another classroom across the way gets shot today. And our parents are kissing our children goodbye, and we don't know if that's going to be the last time they see them. When you look at those children in Uvalde, those parents literally had an honor roll program. I mean, it just literally breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. And it should hurt all of us. But what we also cannot do is that we cannot turn away. And we cannot simply decide that this is just a moment and it's all going to go away. It cannot continue to get lost in the news cycle until it's the next story and the next story. We're talking about Uvalde, and most of us have stopped talking about Buffalo. And meanwhile, those families in that community are still laying family members to rest. We have to decide as a society that enough is enough, and we can't think that we are so comfortable in our sense of safety and security that we're okay until it's us, and then we want people to do something to help us. And we also have to recognize our power. We have to recognize our power around legislation. We have to recognize that we don't all have equal power. We have to understand. I had someone say, well, there's this interesting conversation around communities of color. They have to vote more. They have to show up at the polls. But if you don't understand the way the gerrymandering works, then you don't understand why their votes in some communities literally do not count even when they're showing up at the polls. And so there is so much to discuss, and I will save all that for a different time, since we're talking technology and children today. But our children are being affected by all of this. And this is the world that we are leaving them to have to not only figure out how to navigate, but we will leave them to have to figure out how to navigate this with the trauma that they are experiencing now that will inform how they show up as adults when they are the ones who are in power. So we really have to be careful with their mental health and wellness, especially recognizing that 50% of all mental illness develops before the age of 14. 50% before the age of 14, and 75% before the age of 24. And so what we know is we are going to raise a society of sick children if we as adults are not better stewards over their mental health and wellness.
I think, I absolutely agree with everything you just said. And I think there's one point in particular I want to underscore, which is that these issues are complex.
Absolutely.
They're systemic. And I think to get to the root, it takes long periods of focused concentration, as well as discourse that is done, in good faith and is done charitably. And one thing that really concerns me is, you mentioned this constant news cycle. There is something sort of inherently broken about the way these platforms were set up and their architecture to be constantly trying to get your attention onto the next thing.
Yes.
And so, the improper response to these kind of tragedies is to oversimplify it, to say it's just mental health or it's just something else, when in fact it's a constellation of different factors.
Absolutely.
And in order to get people aligned around any sort of policy proposal, or to do something collectively, you would need to come to a common understanding. And that sense-making process requires unbroken, focused attention, emotional energy. And that's very hard to conjure up and to allocate if you're being pulled in different directions all the time.
And is for us to be singularly focused. And I'm constantly trying to remind people, I love to say we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. And so I think it is the natural inclination of us to want to be comfortable and to feel safe. And so if we can focus on a singular issue, if we can narrow everything down to just one thing, with Uvalde, it's the doors. With racism, it's a lone wolf. With mental health, it's just a sick person. As opposed to being able to see the complexities of all these things, it allows us to look at that and narrow the scope of people who are watching and who are speaking and who are passionate and who are advocating. Because the more that we drill down into singular spaces, the more people that we lose in the conversation, because they say, oh, I'm not a gun owner. I don't care about guns. It doesn't affect me. I'm not racist. I don't have racist people in my family. Racism doesn't affect me. I am not a parent. I don't have children. Those issues about school or kids don't affect me. And so what we don't recognize is that we're all interconnected, and that our entire way of functioning as a society, we are bound to one another, whether we like it or not. High tides float all boats, and low tides will surely sink us all. And so until we are really willing to deal with that, we will continue to have these dynamics that just drive us into a place of discord and into those silos that we started talking about at the top of the hour.
Absolutely. And hopefully there are solutions, cultural, technological, policy that can help us break out of this cycle. Because if you look at the trend, everyone's become increasingly atomized, sort of narcissistic. It's just like you said, fundamentally to be human, let alone to be a citizen in a pluralistic democratic society, it's fundamentally a relational existence, right? No man or woman is an island, and you have to be able to, work with others. Yeah. So somehow if we can leverage these things as media for connection, that would be ideal.
Yeah. I think so. And I was just going to say, best questions that I love to ask people when we're bringing diverse, and diverse does not always just mean ethnically diverse. That means regionally. That means sexual orientation, age, gender, religion. Diverse literally means as many different individuals represented as possible. I'd love to start off the conversation by saying, tell me something that I don't know. Right? Tell me something that I don't know from your lived experience. Because if you can get a room full of diverse people in a room, and each person can say something about a topic that everyone else or most people don't know, we don't understand one another's perspectives. We don't understand one another's lived experiences. We don't know the frustrations or the pain or the sadness that groups of people are carrying. And so when we bring individuals together who have collective lived experiences, when we bring Black women together, or we bring children together of different age groups, or we bring indigenous people together, or transgender people, or whoever is represented in the room, when we bring them to that conversation, they're bringing their entire lived experience. And so they have something to offer uniquely that other people may not understand. And if we just are willing to hear the experience that someone else is having, not from a place to debate it, because that is the other part of this, is that we are looking to feel better about how we see the world, and we often want the world around us to be reaffirmed through our own eyes. And so when people tell us that they are having a different experience, it's easy for us to reject that. And I like to say, what if what they're telling you is an experience that they are having, and not just them, but other individuals who share that lived experience? And if we can just operate there to better understand, what experience are 5-year-olds having around technology? Their opinions matter. What experience are 12-year-olds having around mental health? What experience are 20-year-olds having around schooling? What experience are 30-year-olds having around social culture? What experience are individuals with autism, or who are non-binary, or who are Christian, or who are white male, or who are, you name it, we can just fill in the blank. What experience are the people who make us who we are as a nation and even as a world? What experience are they having, and how are they experiencing us? And how do we hold that? How do we take that in? How do we toss that around in ourselves in a way that doesn't activate our defensiveness? And even if it does, it doesn't cause us to reject that experience. But whether if we don't like what we hear, it then moves us and motivates and inspires us to change the experience that that individual is having with us. And I think that that is something that is going to heal the world, even with the use of technology.
And it all starts with asking questions, humbly inquiring, listening, and paying attention. Excellent. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a beautiful place to conclude. I know we're having some AV issues, so sorry they're going to be some gaps in the recording. But we'll get that all sewn up together.
It's been a day.
We'll have to get you back on here. You've got your outdoor
the
office.
The birds are calling.
It's wonderful. All right. So
yes.
Spirit.
Well, listen, I'll perfect the technology. I'll get you guys to do that for me.
Well, we'll get our best team on it. All right. So where can everybody connect with you?
On all of my social media, everywhere. Hey, we want to talk about moving into the new age. I even just got a TikTok account. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I am Talk to Spirit. It's Talk the number 2 Spirit. Yeah, they tell me I have to stay culturally relevant, right? And so for the longest time, I was like, I don't want to do TikTok. Like, I'm not but here I am, and I'm trying to kind of bridge the gap, bridge the divide. So you can find me at Talk to Spirit everywhere on all of my social media. On Fridays, actually, since we're talking social media, I actually do a live mental health chat called Free Advice Friday on my Facebook page every Friday from noon Eastern Standard Time to 1 a.m. Noon Eastern Standard Time to 1 p.m. There it is, Eastern Time. So it's a 1 hour long mental health chat. I allow people to ask questions. I talk back and forth live, give tips, tools, resources, advice, referrals, whatever it is you need all hour long. We've been doing that for like 6 years now, and I love it. So I invite everybody to come and hang out with the Free Advice Friday family, not once, but every opportunity that you get, because it's live. So there's always something different, never a dull moment. And then also starting on June 15th, you mentioned the new show, Family Reboot, that is airing on the Disney Plus platform. And, not to kill technology, but to show that balance. Family Reboot is about a series of therapists, life coaches, etc., taking families who are completely disconnected from each other and a little too over-involved and overzealous in their technological use. They have to put their electronic devices in a bag and gladly, although begrudgingly for most of the younger folks, turn them over to us for a week in exchange for some great high quality family bonding time. So if you get a chance, check out Family Reboot on Disney Plus starting June 15th.
I can't wait to see it. Spirit, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I can't wait for the next one.
Absolute pleasure. I'll come back anytime you have me. Thank you, Christian, and thank you to the Metaverse.